Hello, and guess who's back? I survived my illness, and here I am, back with Tweedledee and Tweedledum. But today we have a guest with us who will introduce you shortly. But before we get to the serious business, or should we introduce a guest first? Would you like to do the honors?
Well, he can introduce himself. He's very familiar with us, yeah. But I've known him for a while.
You guys were in university?
We were at university together. I was a senior, and so.
Oh, you must emphasize that you were a senior.
Yes, it's very important.
A whole year. Eh?
It's very important. So never mind that he holds the title of CEO. He's got his seniors, so I'm one of his seniors.
So who is he?
All right, Chris Mugaga, but I think you can introduce yourself to our audience so that they fully understand.
Thank you so much. As you heard, my name is Christopher Tapunda Mugaga. Every time I tell people about my saying Mugaga, you know what Mugaga means when you're in Uganda?
What
in Uganda, Mugaga means a very rich man, feel rich.
Mufun.
So I can't walk in the streets of Kampala feeling because they were associated with something. That's the meaning of maybe
that doesn't sound like a bad problem to have.
Maybe a major highlight of my life as well. I'm born a triplet,
Really?
3 guys who were brought to the world same day on a Wednesday around 7 p.m. So I think that's the bigger profile of who I am.
You're a triplet?
Yeah, indeed,
right.
Absolutely.
Where are you?
So are you sure we have the right one tonight?
Are you
the other two are very identical. I'm dark, much taller than 2 of them, very light.
But the other two are the same.
You might not separate the two. By merely looking at them, you will not know who is who.
So going to my O-level biology, it's possible that you guys were 2 eggs. The other was split and you were your own.
As a novice in the area, I presume it could be a possibility, I suppose.
And what are their names?
Taurari and Tapiwa. My
And you are
name is
Takunda.
Takunda.
We put them.
So the 3 T's.
Yes.
That's quite fascinating.
So
Yeah.
that's me.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
No, I normally don't talk much
Yeah.
about it until.
Well, there you go. That's why it's necessary that people introduce themselves
Yeah,
and give us interesting anecdotes.
Wow.
Yeah, fascinating.
Fascinating,
Thank you
yeah.
so much, guys. It's a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to an exciting show. I've been following it since its inception, I suppose, and I've seen quite heated debates, and I guess today will make a difference as well. And I hope I'll.
You're up for it.
I suppose.
And you realize we're in the silly season, right?
Yes.
Which means that the two of us have been on a certain level for days now. So we're probably uncontrollable and ungovernable.
Well, he's a.
No, we have
Well, that's why I'm sitting on the side of the table today.
To control.
To try and govern.
Interesting.
You didn't do a bad job last week with the doc.
No, I
I
didn't.
mean, I was away for a week and you guys had a rasta in the studio.
Well, it was an invasion.
And are you sure you guys only had tea and wine?
Well, they had 2 bottles. They had a bottle before the show and a bottle during the show.
I plead the fifth.
Anyway, what are we having today? Okay, we'll let the teetotalers go first.
Yes, thank you very much. And Chris, thank you very much for coming over. More importantly, because you are a teetotaler, and this is something that I hardly get to enjoy.
Because he's
with
usually the
someone.
minority.
I'm usually by myself,
He's always.
enjoying my
drinking
tea.
boring.
So I'm glad that today we will enjoy it. It's a particular speciality. It's a rooibos tea, and it's got masala and chai spices. So I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy
I
it.
suppose, but it's not a local product, it appears.
No, this one is not. It's a South African product.
No, we are for buy local. But
All right. Okay. Well, you're unfortunate. I mean, last week we had local.
Are you missing who gave that to you?
Yes. Thank you very much, George.
Oh,
George was kind enough to
Wow.
supply the eats as well as the tea.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Sponsor. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
not entirely sure why I did that.
Thank you
I'm
so much.
I've heard a story about how the biscuits ended up on the show. They were meant for a particular important woman in George's life.
And why are you setting me up?
And Tinashe was rather rude and aggressive in appropriating. But anyway,
I'm not so sure about appropriating, but George was kind enough to offer, and I was kind enough to take.
Anyway, Tinashe knows who he's stolen from, and I think that he is appropriately qualified to defend himself from the attacks that he
wasn't going to be over my guru. Extend over my guru. And as for us more sensible people, what do we do?
As always, on this corner of the show, we are drinking something much more interesting. And this is actually a single malt of the PT character, the Lafroig. It's an Islay single malt. This is what made me first fall in love with PT whiskies. And I'm delighted to announce that it's from a good friend of ours, Tich Musoni, aka Danger Mouse.
Musoni.
And it's so good that I only ever have it neat.
And you may recall the night before I got married. Do you? Well, you
Wow.
It was at your house.
I don't remember.
But you were the sober one. But we did drink some good whiskey
Just
on
to
that
say
night.
it was uneventful, so that's a good thing.
Suffice to say, there's a good chance that I might not have gotten married. Chris, welcome to the show.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, just a quick one. How come you're having different glasses?
It seems.
Well, it's just a question of sophistication.
tough.
This is
All right.
I forget what the jargon is for a glass of this shape. It basically channels the flavor to the nose, and that's just whiskey
basic.
glass.
No, anyway. Cheers. Cheers, eh?
Sunset.
And compliments to the season,
No worry.
and
Thank you so much.
all the best for
Cheers.
2022.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So you guys have been busy for the last few months
Yeah, indeed.
with the help of some German donors who might not be welcome in this country next year, but that's a different story.
Yeah, but you don't see the message in Germany. You know, there are local donors who are based in Germany, but they are not German.
Well, let's see what the new PVO Act says about that.
Possibly, I believe it will be a patriotic document, which means if it can't support then what we are having. You saw the product supported by the Germans, but you can see the product. I believe it's so pro-Zimbabwe. It's a patriotic product, and it's maybe shouting more patriotic than the act itself.
So what's the product?
Yeah, we launched our State of Industry and Commerce Survey, which will be a flagship product for Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. I think you know worldwide the international best practice. If you see the business representative bodies, they normally become the arbiter and trusted sources of data. So we have to generate data for the market. Time and again, if you were to ask the background to the consummation.
Sorry, Chris. What is the product?
It is State of Industry and Commerce Survey.
Oh,
It's a survey.
Yes.
okay. So you guys did.
I believe you have a copy that you want to show our audience.
You can see the copy from Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. Inaugural, get it right, not just
All
a
right.
survey. But this was the first of its kind.
State of Industry and Commerce
And
Survey
Commerce, get it right.
2021.
But we are not saying
But it was not a priority 5, 10, 20 years ago.
it had been. But normally, you know, every day when you wake up, you see a gap in the market. Time and again, whenever we interact with bankers, you talk to international financial institutions, there was always a gap when they ask about the market. Most of the times you'll see many times when they ask about the market, our response has always been so short-termistic. They ask about what is the state of Zimbabwean economy. You know, the first thing which will run into your heart, mind, and possibly ears is how the auction is performing, possibly how the monetary policy committed certain interest within a certain level. But we are saying let's debunk such a short-termistic approach to interpreting this economy and try to bring a product which we believe is credible and will become a source of data, not only for private sector players, but even for the central government.
So, as a viewer of our show, you must be alive to the fact that the three of us are eternal optimists about the state of affairs in this country and our future.
This guy is an optimist, especially me.
Especially Tinashe. So perhaps we could start with what are the most optimistic stories or the salient features of this survey? What makes you most optimistic about 2022 being the creator or publisher of this survey?
Yeah, thank you. I think what the report is telling me is a story that Zimbabwe is certainly not a walking textbook of pathology, and I call it.
Textbook. Okay, you know, like, we
our challenges for the years back, but I think you see some
40 years,
coming up. And so what is coming out of the report, if you look closely, you'll see a number of companies reaching in the economy, even regardless of the pandemic, which is almost 20 months ago. What is surprising is you see people still reaching companies. You see the NASA numbers in terms of active membership. The quarter into 2021 from 2020 is almost a 12% increase. And this has been something sustained, which we see is positive. Then look also at capacity utilization. I think you agree that capacity utilization in the market is naturally limited to dominantly two sectors. That's from our colleagues manufacturing sector as well as mining from the Chamber of Mines. But then we attempted to make sure we're going to have a holistic view of the entire economy regarding capacity utilization. So you see numbers from the parts in the trade mill, numbers from agriculture, tourism.
So what percentage is first?
Yeah, the average you see is almost about 40% average. But if you look, it's ranging from about 10% the lowest, which is high.
No, it's 40% this year. What was it last year?
Pardon?
What was it last year?
It's not the number decided. So we are building.
Wait a minute. Have you been going one of those conferences? Anyway, so I had a look at that. So, yes, you mentioned capacity utilization. You dedicate a huge part of the report to capacity utilization. What does this even mean? I mean, I look at it, I see agriculture has got the highest capacity utilization. But I drive around the country and I see weeds. So, what does it mean?
But I've got a better question to ask. Well, the point is, before we get there, I've got a methodology question to ask, Chris. This is a survey. So when you say capacity utilization, what is it based on? It's based on a survey asking somebody. So you could ask me what my capacity utilization is. How confident are you that I'm telling you what's actually on the ground?
Oh, you did what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like if men were self-reporting what's happening in their bedrooms, I think.
So it's a methodology question before we get into
understandable. I think if you look beside the triangulation approach,
you're using big words, Chris. We're very simple people.
Oh, okay. I'll try
to
discover the meaning.
I'm only 6. He's 6, I'm 7.
Ah, fantastic. But if you look closely, I think you'll see with several data. These are our members. Maybe as a background. So when you talk of capacity utilization for company X, we're not talking of a company from Honolulu, which we are just imagining. It's a company we've been interacting. What is the basis for a Chamber of Commerce carrying out such a survey? The fact that we know what is the market. We are not novices who are approaching the market simply because we want to do a survey. So yes, we know what is happening in the industry, but we need it to confirm also. For the online person, as you saw, but also interaction with the company.
Yeah, but Chris, you're avoiding the question.
Okay.
So you ask a guy, what's your capacity utilization?
Yes.
And he says X%.
Maybe it's the same.
But what does that number mean, right? So, if you ask me at my house, what is capacity utilization of our vehicles? We've got this old V8 that my wife's grandfather left, and it's never operated since 1972. That one's at 0. We've got one of my dad's old pickups that's parked in the garage for safekeeping. That's at 0. Then we've got my wife's Honda Fit that she uses every day. That's probably I'll say it's at 110% because I don't think it should be more than 20%. So on average, we are at what's that? We're at 40%.
Third, yeah.
But one of those cars is a 1932 Ford V8. So what does that number mean?
It's important. I think the issue is what does the number mean? With your old vehicle, I think let's simplify it to say capacity. I say we are looking at the actual capacity, what is happening in terms of output for something. Versus what would be the possible maximum. Of which the older the vehicle is, I say it's easier to get even a higher capacity utilization because naturally it's already somewhere. blended, it's at a lower level. But to go deeper into responding to your question, the capacity lesson simply means, for us, what are we trying to teach? I think that's the question. Firstly, you know, what I call a controversial option in the eyes of the public. There has been a debate on production going up, local value or local products.
Are you talking about the foreign currency of auction?
No, yes, I'm linking with the auction.
Okay.
Which I know you're passionate over. Yes.
Well, passion against
With over $2 billion have been allocated since the consummation of the auction. The question, the narrative has been to what extent is capacity lesson gone up in companies? So to us,
what is capacity?
So to us,
This guy asks his own question, doesn't he?
so capacity lesson, we just compare what you're producing versus the maximum possible what can be produced by.
But then how is it possible?
I don't know what I said.
How is it possible that you report that agriculture is at 80%?
Thank you very much.
When the whole country is full of wheat?
Which is a different question. Let me then tackle that particular question. I think the misconception is when someone takes a drive across the country and see the wages they are saying, your question definitely will be
Anecdotal, yes, I agree
but
with you.
you then have to appreciate in the survey. We will not come to you and just ask those who saw ways and say, capacity should surely be low because if you're not part of our sector, naturally, I think then we will try to analyze what it means when you do a survey.
Maybe let me articulate George's point.
But is it clear in any way?
Let me articulate it better. Let me articulate it better. He's saying that already you've got a leading question or you've got a leading answer where you're saying there's the auction. So if you come to me and I've been using the auction and you ask me what my capacity utilization is, I'm going to tell you that it's 100%, especially if I've been on the auction. I'm not saying that's the case, but I want to zero down on your methodology. Can we really trust what we are getting from ZNCC? From a methodology perspective, from cross-referencing question, from a practical question, and he gave examples of, okay, what exactly do you mean? Because all our machineries are not the same. That's what he was trying to say. That when you look at machineries across sectors, because yours is, the breadth is quite wide, and elsewhere in the world, because we must benchmark with elsewhere in the world. And elsewhere in the world, they'll be very specific that the industry, this particular industry, and they won't necessarily go across all industries because you're benchmarking very different things. So we need you to articulate from a methodology perspective what gives you the confidence that what you have from a methodology perspective is actually what's on the ground.
Thank you so much. I think it's too repetition, but I'll continue on what you're talking about. Remember, I said it's a business membership organization. So our methodology already with an advantage. Why? Because we deal with membership. Climate search, we do this every day for starters. Then obviously, the information from what we don't discount your ADB and other institutions, including our sister BMOs. They also provide certain business membership organizations. Oh, it's quite common. Let me try to simplify. Business membership organization. Okay, so business membership organizations like ZNCC, where members affiliate, and then they are driven by
CZI,
chemicals. So all those also have their own in-house resources to carry our service, which then feeds into our second organization. But primarily, you will see we've done online survey, almost about 280 companies in different sectors, which is your question definitely from the potential, obviously, slightly above 500, which was dominantly online because of the whole lockdown policies. We know there's room for us to continue preaching on the numbers. The bigger the sample size naturally, the more you're trying to deal with the area itself. The bias in this, can we say? But we dealt with all of it.
Okay.
So I'm quite happy to, for the purposes of a more interesting question, take what you're saying about the integrity and veracity of your survey at face value. Okay, but something that you said piqued my interest. You mentioned the auction, and you introduced this BMO acronym into my lexicon. So, and there's a spectrum of these BMOs, and they have different opinions about the auction. Some are quite adamant that it's not an auction, that it's failed, that it has issues. Some will say that
you are adamant.
Some will say that this is the best thing to happen to Zimbabwe since sliced bread. Where
And I'm one guy who remembers sliced bread.
With a little titty there.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Do you remember? It was phenomenal.
So it's a picture of that titty there.
So where is the ZNCC on the spectrum? Is the auction the best thing to happen to Zimbabwe since sliced bread, or it's not even an auction? It's really an abomination.
No, well, if you read his report, it's actually his recommendations. Well, it's not your recommendations, it's your members, right?
No.
What did your members say about it?
No, I think we can find ways to tweak really for their different schools of thought. And a disclaimer, my views might not necessarily be limited on maybe membership because it's a variable opinion maybe which changes with what's happening also. But in ZNCC naturally, we never had a big challenge with auction. I think our message has always been there's an auction which promotes price discovery is of course maybe to price allocation. You know, once everyone will think an auction is there to allocate.
So does the auction promote price discovery, or is it allocation? In your view?
I'll definitely go on that. But our position as chairman of Congress have been clear that the auction, like any auction you can think of, West 2 in that auction is, the tenets of what it is about. Which is to promote price discovery. Once price discovery is promoted, I think you know how you can even somehow give life to even the internet market after the very changes when you don't play in allocating. The moment you bring an auction and you elevate the issue of allocating, naturally even then somehow who play this kind of voting with their feet and not trusting the system.
So what do you say?
However,
What do you say? Is it working or is it not? And what do you mean to say?
it has room. I think a lot of companies have benefited. If you look at
So none
our
of your
survey,
members are
members like
exporters?
this, if you look at the survey itself in terms of the number of companies, the manufacturing sector itself, one of the biggest beneficiaries of the auction. Capacity utilization.
No, it means it's being subsidized.
Yeah, we can
That's the cross-referencing.
I know the passion on that subject, I understand. But to a certain extent, we
Actually, you know some whiskey.
I can tell you this is the best. The passion.
Good man.
It's not the best possibly in this current state. That's the reason why this chain of commerce will continue pushing for continuous improvements, which in the long run process we will not even have to rely on an auction as a reference for the exchange rate. But given the dynamics today which we're having, I think what is more important is to see a liberal approach, which we believe there's leadership for that. But for that matter, we need also to a certain extent complement the central bank in these difficult times also knowing the dynamics in which it is operating. Remember,
So if you were an exporter,
You're using a lot of big words. Talk to my mother. Is the auction working or is it not? My mother is a retired grade 2 teacher in Neighboring.
yeah, I
Can
think
you talk to her? Is it working or is it?
it's they are beneficiaries of cards there, of the forex, naturally. It depends. But what we are saying is it can be.
Chris Hanzi zuri kushanda here, kana kushanda.
Do you remember my kids before they go? What should I go and tell my mother? I'm dropping off my kids on Friday morning. What should I say to my mother when I drop off my kids?
The auction is working, but it can do better than what it is.
Okay.
Really? I think it's clear. That's a good place for us to go. That's a good place for us to go for a break. Chris has given us an answer. You can now go and this is the little boys' room. You can order your notes. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. That was a bit of a hot under the collar moment for you, Chris.
Thank you. No, it's part of it, so we need to enjoy it.
How's the tea?
The tea is amazing. Hot, you can't believe. Wow. Was it hot in the video?
Yeah, I think we've warmed it up a bit, and it's got masala, so I suppose it's
Yes.
got a bit of
It
it.
raises your internal temperature.
Well, depends with what the temperature is outside.
Over the standard.
Yeah. So
What
if
is hot
it's
is on.
in this room,
Yes.
if the room is hot, then it will cool you off. If the room is cool, then it'll heat you up.
That might explain why Chris is feeling a bit warm
Yes.
under the collar right now.
There's a perfect imbalance, actually.
Okay.
Chris, one of the things about the show is we just having drinks. We talked about interesting things. And we don't know what to do. And nobody should take us too seriously because we have no business talk about these issues.
No, it's good business.
There's experts that should be discussing this. But anyway, we were paging through your report, your survey report, and one of the issues that emerges is half of your respondents say they're exporting. That's a very high number. I mean, you guys are both economists. How does this compare with history here? Have we ever had a time where half our companies are exporting?
Generally, we are an exporting nation. Per capita, we are an exporting nation. But I think Chris can speak more to it.
No, per capita, like you rightly said, what makes it exciting, if you look at big economies by population, I think making comparisons, like you rightly said, in terms of export persons, certainly our numbers are amazing to the extent that possibly the next person will ask if ever seems to have even cash challenges or forex challenges. Is it because of forex or what? I was looking at, if you look at the figures today, Zambia, of course, is about 9 billion. Obviously,
9 billion what? 9 billion exports?
Exports. We're talking about
That's almost double us.
to a certain extent, with dominance of obviously
Copper.
the metal itself. Then, if you remove
And a few things still.
if you remove copper, you then be shocked. If you try to push away copper, and try also maybe to remove even the mineral side, you still see our industry outside the non-mining industry is a bigger contributor to export costs. So it's not shocking that almost half of the business are exporters. But obviously we are facing a number of challenges which I believe we definitely bring on board to ask what challenges our exporters are facing.
This is good.
But
He asks his own questions and answers them.
But the reality is we are an exporting nation, and the numbers themselves, if you were to look even, I was checking numbers, if you look from January to August 2020, the corresponding period to this year, you see outstanding jump almost 60%.
In exports.
Yes.
Exports have grown. In merchandise, they've grown from 4.7 last year to 5.7. So it's about 1 billion exports.
So about 20 or 30%.
Upwards, yeah. In 1 year. It's merchandise. That's goods and services.
Exports.
Yeah, the actual goods and services.
So if you follow such numbers, I think you will see we are not performing so badly. But obviously, you look at the import bill itself, and we always argue to say when you're looking at the import bill for Zimbabwe, you don't limit your analysis possibly to the merchandise imports also. Why we believe one of the major issues which is impacting negatively on business around is the porosity of our borders, very porous. So think of it, if you are having smuggled goods coming unofficially with not less than.
Are your members engaging in cross-border trading?
It's not a core. I think we have a desk which we call the SME, Small Medium Enterprise Desk.
All
so
right, okay.
definitely you have quite a bigger component involved in that.
From there.
But
Okay, Chris. So porous borders. Why does it matter that the borders are porous?
then you have statistics, you can't rely on it. You can look at the figures and say maybe our trade balance is favorable, which then you cheat and say fundamentally we are doing well. But when you have a porous border and you know the industry is exposed to possibly 2 billion worth of imports, which are unaccounted for, then crowding out.
Okay, so
Is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing?
To phrase this question differently, if you have the right policy framework, right, then it doesn't make sense to import anything or to smuggle anything into the country because the formal sector will have a monopoly. So for there to be smuggling in the first instance, it means that there's an incentive, right? There's some upside there for the risks. And it's a policy issue, right? If you have the right policy framework, there's no incentive and everything goes through formal channels.
Yeah, I think if you look for, just look at the numbers. I want to contextualize the smuggling. That's the nature of the economy. It's also a function of structure of the economy, which you can then argue to say is it a policy aspect or something. 3 years ago, if World Bank had put Zimbabwe's informal economy at 61% of the total economy, which is arguably possibly the third largest informal economy.
It remains in the top 5.
In the world.
It's quite big worldwide. Because you see such numbers as 60. This is Africa, and obviously you can't expect any part of the continent possibly to have such numbers, maybe Latin America or Europe. So, given such numbers, 61%, it will tell you that an underground economy is so entrenched in the propensity for an underground economy.
But why is it
non-celebrated?
Okay, so maybe let me support. Let me actually support Chris.
Okay, why?
No, but
It's a different question, I guess.
You're using big words, right?
Yes.
And let's take potato crisps, a very basic example, where you take potatoes, you slice them up, put them in hot oil, cool them, and put them in a packet. We have a big portion of the shelf in this country occupied by imported potato crisps. And of course, yes.
Oh, but then you're being unfair. You're being unfair.
So I want to tell the argument.
Yes.
No, he's being unfair.
So is the issue the porosity of our borders, or is the issue that we can't make potato chips as well as other countries?
I can explain it, and I can clear the air. So first of all, from where Chris is coming from, when you look at do we have a trade balance? We don't have a trade balance. We are actually exporting 5.7 and we're importing 5.7. Now what he's saying is, if you were to just look at the data as it is, you might actually not understand that we have another shadow, I would call it the shadow economy, where we're actually importing more than the 5.7.
How we pay for it?
It's all underground.
No. So it's how we pay for it? It's cash. But where's that cash coming from?
It's a cash economy.
Yes, but that means there's equal and opposite export. Or else we'd have gone broke a long time ago. Equal and opposite export.
Yes, you are right.
Because it's...
Yes, you are right.
Some of it is coming from the diaspora.
No, wherever it is, it doesn't matter.
It is a bias.
It doesn't matter.
So some of that diaspora,
it could be gold exports as well.
Actually coming through
but the accident was not on the source though.
Yeah, it wasn't on the source. So let's be clear. So, and then to answer your question directly around the porous borders, the issue is less to do with why people are importing or we're uncompetitive, but the issue has to do with tax, duty. So if you think about it, the only reason why we have porous borders is because instead of paying 100% tax on something,
it's easier to walk through the bush.
It's just easier to walk through the bush
pay.
No, you can't discount that. But also competitiveness. It's an issue in this sense.
Competitiveness.
Oh yeah, I want to bring it.
So we can't make cheap potato chips.
I think that's where I differ with you. Because his argument is actually, it's not about competitiveness. Because we are equally exporting using the porous borders as well. So if you look at our gold, for example,
no, we can argue then.
Our gold is also being exported using the porous borders, and then we're bringing in potato crisps using the same porous borders. So it's not about competitiveness.
It's interaction of factors. Remember, we spoke about the informality, which is in trade. Don't forget the structure of the economy we're talking about. Secondly, trade openness. Obviously, if you look at the average tariffs, taxes, you're talking about all those things, they are too prohibitive for business. Indeed, they are. Then, I think the challenge then on border porosity, what is the incentive for you to smuggle that vehicle? It's so high, isn't it? Well, you know, what is it? It's higher, naturally.
It's the duty.
60%.
Look at the duty, look at other, not only the duty, and other factors possibly not related to direct duty, but they still remain non-tariff.
The process issues.
Barriers, which are process issues. So we need to look at it. If you look at the Chamber of Commerce submissions, including in this particular survey, you'll see how it's ignoring the unfriendly border itself.
That's a good point.
And you've seen how Zimra, for years, have been promising some of the maybe what I would consider cosmetic measures to deal with, the issue of drones and CCTV cameras. Those are cosmetic peripheral measures to deal with smuggling. You know what I'm saying? But what Nashid mentioned, we also can't overlook it from the expert side. We don't have proper figures, but in ZNCC we believe not less than 1.5 billion worth of minerals smuggled on average. of the country annually.
Why?
Oh, no. Before we get the methodology,
Yes.
how did you get to 1.5?
No, get it right here. The issue of 1.5 on minerals is not related to this, but it's related to our fellows from the mining. Then we are trying to argue, well, how can 1.5 billion in minerals? Remember, they started in look at minerals.
Okay.
But you know, remember we have our daily surveys or studies also, which are beyond this particular document. But they will then support that. Look near the current account, former figures. You really can make a position,
A judgment.
take a position.
I tend to agree with that.
Why does it make sense to smuggle your
The tax system.
The regulatory environment is
I would even go further and say it's the tax system. The tax system, there's no incentive for anyone to be formal. There's a great disincentive.
I like where he's going.
Well, it's not about what you like.
Yeah, but
allow him to lie.
so you say there's a regulatory incentive to smuggle exports.
Yes.
So here I am. I want to talk about gold because gold is emotive and it's a special mineral.
Is it? But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, but I have mined. I'm from Rewa. We have a lot of black granite. I've mined my blocks of black granite. I've sent them off to Beira, off they go to China or to Italy or to Spain. What regulatory incentives or disincentives are in place for me formalizing this export?
I think if you ask about the incentives, firstly, we have a history from 2016. It's debatable. It became a multi-subject and it was later with its own controversies regarding the bond notes. But I think the genesis of bond notes.
It was an export incentive.
It was
an export incentive. People misunderstood the governor. It was an export
That's what I'm
incentive.
saying. That's why you did. I'm saying it was later with its own controversies. But basically, it was about what? Being an incentive. We can debate whether it made sense. But maybe also from a regulator side, I don't know to what extent our institutions are strengthened and strong enough to monitor. But corruption is also there.
No, but I
so
have
Chris,
my 30 times black granite in my village in Mureo.
it's nothing to do with the
My
regulatory.
grandmother's family is from Uzumba. Where all this
What do you want
controversy.
to do with the black granite?
I'm sending it to Italy.
You want to export it?
Why don't I want to put it on a truck, go to Zimra and say, I'm sending 30 tons of black granite to Italy?
One of the basic reasons, obviously, I think, when we try to go to the auction and talk about the exchange rate, we are an exporter.
But that's nothing to do with regulatory.
No, I'm trying to broaden the whole.
Do you want to re-answer your question about whether the auction is working?
Give me a chance, give me a chance.
So the exchange rate in Zimbabwe since possibly 1991, which had always been an issue. I looked at numbers since 2000 up to 2010. Almost 45% of finance ministers in sub-Saharan Africa have been fired within a year after devaluing their currency. It's depreciation rate, but devaluing is showing you that there's a fixed attitude in exchange rate management. I think.
Rigidity, we call it currency rigidity.
I want to spend my time.
Currency.
So I don't look at the auction as an animal instead because there's an auction.
So I don't want to bring my money to the formal sector.
So you don't want to because the incentives of the export proceeds, because it's a tax which is talking about to export. That we can't. That's why I said we can agree the auction to a certain extent it's working, but it needs to be tweaked. When do you tweak it? Let's look at the spread.
No. There are some questions here.
It's a subsidy to importer.
Okay.
Why is it
Okay, but go back to my 30 tons of granite that have mined.
He's answered.
in my.
I did, but
Okay,
I think he wants
what
some
else?
subjects on this.
What
It's a
else?
different issue.
What else?
Basically, what he's saying is that the auction is fantastic if you're an importer, but if you're an exporter, not so much. So maybe we should tweak it so it's also fantastic for export.
But then 45% of finance ministers who've done so have been fired in the subject over a 10-year period.
Also not be naive maybe to try to argue. Yes, I see you throw numbers sometimes people to talk about it. What
You threw them.
No, I don't.
45% of ministers.
Listen to the numbers I'm going to talk about. You hear about to what extent. I personally believe, outside ZNCC, I believe the exchange rate is overvalued. To me,
At 108, you don't think 108 is a fair value?
A whole new question of his own.
No, it's not the whole question. Remember, as we are talking about.
But who are you to say it's overvalued?
No, he's entitled to his view. He's a market participant.
I'm a market participant in my own way.
Yeah.
He's not away from his point about regulation.
But sometimes they pay 40% figures.
So you're selling it all at 108 because it's overvalued.
No.
No.
I think that's not the question. That's a
In
different
his personal, he said in his personal circumstances.
Are you referring to another two guys?
Yes.
Another two guys.
So if it's at 108,
Are they in the death?
he's better off selling at 108 if it's overvalued.
Okay, guys. Calm down.
No, selling US dollars.
Calm down. So he's triplet brother. You call him a twin brother. I don't know if you call him a triplet.
There's a trip, brother.
Your triplet brother. He's in the diaspora. There's a funeral in the family, and he sends. Where is it?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
No, I don't know the currency.
No, it doesn't matter. You send US dollars.
Okay. So he sends you his 30 pounds. His contribution to the funeral.
That probably has a bit more.
Okay, 30 pounds.
He sends his 300 pounds.
30 pounds.
Generous.
Come on, George.
He sends his 300 pounds.
That's 500 US.
And you go, or wherever.
And you say, oh, the zip dollar is
designated. Welcome back. Thanks to Zesa, we took, shall we say, an enforced break. Do you feel better?
A little bit.
You mean you didn't go?
No.
Well, you can't go until the end of the segment. Anyway, so Chris, back to the hypothetical 30 pounds.
We agreed to 300
pounds.
Okay, so 300 pounds.
500 US.
Chairman went mamo, my pure 300 pounds. Two sides. One side, Ruguti, and a bank Topiwa,
108.
108. The other side is, and they come Sika Tema Topiwa,
200.
Chairman went now, Motichi.
Yeah, I think
Currency is overvalued.
I think maybe your question is very relevant. It will be my duty as the chairperson also to send a message to those who will be attending funeral. That it's already a problem. We are in a quagmire. I think I had hinted to the valuation of the exchange rate when I say to a certain extent I believe it's overvalued. So to a certain extent, to a rational player in the market, naturally I think it will not be a brainer. But what I'll be more interested in possibly is how do I work hard to close the gap? The gap which you're talking about, since you also gave reference to the parallel market, but also the parallel market rate sometimes.
So what's a no-brainer? Just to be clear. What's a no-brainer? What's a no-brainer? Getting 200 or getting 108? What's a no-brainer?
What's no-brainer here is, I think you appreciate, I gave a background to the valuation argument. I think naturally you heard me saying, if I feel like the exchange rate is overvalued, then to a rational person, I will not be certainly quite very much satisfied with the official rate. But what I'm more worried about, I think it's more important to send that message even to our listeners and viewers. How do we close? Because if you also continue fighting a tail will never reach, which is the black market rate, I believe also the parallel market rate is driven by greed, is to a certain extent also driven by fundamentals which don't exist, but possibly expectations which are continuously driving the numbers. I believe even if you put a cap on money supply growth to a certain extent, I don't see the exchange rate in the short to medium term stabilizing to a certain extent.
So wait. What you're saying to me, I want to push back on what you're saying because I think it's fundamental, right? If in a free market, let's say we had a floating range, a free floating exchange rate, yeah, and the exchange rate went to 180. Who in this economy is incentivized to buy currency at 200 or 220 or to push it to 250?
Especially if money supply growth is capped. If there's zero money supply growth.
Yeah, your question then, where it's defeating itself possibly is, remember, I'm trying to put a variable here of money supply growth. Yes. Versus the behavioral factors, which to a certain extent, I'm so convinced that, the legacy issues, we can't discount them in this economy. The Gideon Gono era of quantitative easing, it will continue sending signals to an average citizen that to a certain
You're calling Gideon Gono era quantitative easing
is Alan Greenspan, but okay.
Quantitative easing,
No,
but
Benaki,
what made the quantitative easing and health possibly or obviously, I think, the output side remained stagnant, if not plummeting. So naturally, I think, it becomes inflationary.
I think, let me give the numbers.
That we didn't
So Chris, let me give you the numbers. Simple question again. In 2018, we're now in
2021.
December 2021, but using the latest numbers that we have, in 2018, September 2018, the money supply was 10 billion RTGS. Just the total was.
Maybe our producer can put up a graph, which we actually get from your report.
No. I think we have the numbers.
Yeah. So 10 billion, right? That's 2018. And then 3 years later, in September 2018, that number is now 364.
Wait, like times 30?
Yeah, 35.
36?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Well done,
Yeah.
George. Well done.
well, thank you.
You can now calculate. Oh, this is big.
This is a fantastic case
Is it
of
better than
Lafroig enhancing cognitive.
Okay, good maths, George. But I want to hear from Chris. So, Chris, this is 3 years, and you had the money supply has gone up by 35 times, right? And remember, the 35 times, we are actually valuing the US dollars, which is about 1.7. We're valuing it at the official. So if you were to value it at a market rate of 200, it means that the 365 should actually be somewhere in the 600, 700, right? But for what it is, there's been a 35 times increase. Would you say that people are being irrational, being behavioral, that the rate is pushed, being greedy, when you have that amount of money supply
in local
and growth
currency.
in 3 years?
No, I want to respond. I think one thing is analysts you would appreciate, I think.
I'm not. I'm just a dumb accountant.
An accountant.
Oh, are you
decent
coping out
analyst
to being an accountant?
Oh, you guys-
Because we're going to use that against you for the rest of the season.
And the
I
world-
already just say-
they are listening.
We already do. But
you
anyway,
just-
let's hear his answer.
Yes, I think everyone knows the exchange rate volatility itself, the depreciation and even the inflation aspect. It's a monetary phenomenon. We know how money supply can weigh down on it. No one is disputing that. I think also our position is clear. If you look at our submissions here, we are clamoring for a restraint, definitely in terms of money supply. I think you see also with government, the reserve money targeting.
So the exchange rate at 200
No,
is
I
not
want
being
to,
greedy.
I'm giving a background to this. But also, I think when we look at it, possibly given the activity in the economy, because when you look at money supply, you also need to look at the output argument. Because then at times when people look at money supply growth, I think they keep other constants and just believe it's money supply and nothing else, which is a problem. If the economy possibly was growing and growing so fast, it will not absorb it at the level.
Like 35 times in 3 years.
I think that.
Okay, so
but
let me
get it right here. I think what we don't want is to lose direction in terms of whether we are supporting the growth in money supply.
But
I
Chris,
think if
you're
you look
in-
at the
you're in
corresponding-
Yeah. I like the point that he wants
If
to
you-
make.
if you follow the
Do you
correspondence-
support the money supply growth that we have on record?
No, it's unhealthy, especially when the economy is not expanding.
thank you.
I think that is
Okay.
basic.
So
That
I'll
one
give
is-
you another statistic.
I don't know whether they're getting where you come.
Yeah.
No, I'm getting where
So
you're coming
Chris, I'll give you another
But if the
statistic.
economy was moving, possibly.
I'll give you another
Because USA is
statistic.
printing money every day.
Absolutely.
Chris, I'll give you
Well,
another
that's-
statistic.
and it's good because the USA
So
is
in
doing it.
2018, the economy was $19 billion GDP
In 2018.
in 2018.
Okay.
And using the World Bank numbers, the economy is now $16.77 billion 2020.
So we've lost about 15%.
So we've lost so to your point, if the economy was growing, but the economy was actually shrinking.
Yeah, not necessarily
But
that I'm
there must-
supporting that the economy was growing, but I'm then prescribing.
No, I want to understand what you're saying. So the economy decreased by 15%. Money supply has increased by 35 times. Where should the exchange rate be?
Maybe you also, what is the position? Have you tried it using the exchange rate, which is our exchange rate, given the local position, without looking at...
Are you talking about 108?
What the figures? No, we have to use...
Because it's not a useful exchange rate.
Well,
What do you
I'm saying, so
What do you mean?
Because we agreed.
We-
that you as the
using-
chairman of the
we're
funeral.
using the- from-
you as the chairman
we're
of the
using
funeral.
the
won't use
exchange
You're not going to
rate.
use 108. No,
okay, so this is the problem I find in Zimbabwe. We use the exchange rate as an input. Let's use the exchange rate as an output. The exchange rate actually is only an output.
Yeah,
We're saying
it is just a signal.
if you've increased your money supply, the economy has shrunk.
It's even worse.
So what should the output be? And then the current system that we have, and this is why these guys are getting agitated, right? They've had a bit to drink, and why they're agitated?
I'm not
because
agitated.
They say,
I'm actually quite happy.
ZNCC,
Excited.
you as ZNCC, what do you say?
When did you become a shrink?
He's not sharing a funeral in my family.
I wanted to pick the question. Please,
All right. So my question is very simple and straightforward. That because you made the allegation that the exchange rate on the para market is really motivated by greed and behavioral economics or
to a certain
behavioral.
extent, but not full extent, of course, it does play a role.
So I want to know to what extent. If the money supply has increased by 35 times, the economy has actually shrunk. Don't you think that actually 200 is actually being generous?
So George, I'm actually gonna return one from Tinashe and indicate that I have a more interesting question. Which is
What's the boring question? This one?
no, seriously. So look, you know what? You guys,
a lot more polite about it this time. No, it's not polite. I think
you guys,
missing it.
you guys have done a great survey, and you are the voice of your members, and we are going into 2022, right? And if you are speaking to the extent that you're not happy with the current policy framework, if you had an exclusive meeting with the treasurer and the governor of the central bank, and you were speaking on behalf of your members, and you were advocating certain important policy changes, what would you advocate?
Yeah, maybe the question is what we advocate since we already meet. Of course, some of the issues we don't really go the trumpet diplomacy we'd always been engaging, even on critical issues.
We're just having drinks.
Included, but I'm going to preempt some of them. It's very important. But some of our submissions can also be, to a certain extent, pushing for even political submissions. But I'm going to choose not to look at those. So it's important for you to know where I'm coming from. I think one issue we continue talking about, which most people tend to underestimate, the institutions, the independence of institutions themselves. They give confidence, which includes also the central bank you're talking about right now. Because most people think the challenge is on the central bank only, or on just money supply. But an analyst will sit and just say money supply had grown, there's a challenge. When you know the laws are still allowing for such an overdraft by government on a central bank account. That's when you should see the holes in the whole system. So one issue we continue emphasizing on is independence of institutions. Secondly, is even enabling the capacity of the legislature, the parliament itself in the country. I think if you look at the debt numbers, which obviously will spark a lot of debate in terms of the numbers, in particular domestic debt, external possibly one can attempt to push it to a certain number in particular. You see a parliament which had been complicit and not being interested. We present to portfolio committees on both industry and also the finance and economic development as Chamber of Commerce, and our issues have been clear that let's exercise restraint regarding debt procurement. If you look at the rate at which debt, which includes also maybe, the 3.2 or 5 farmers compensation, you look at the RB.
Yeah, 3.5 billion.
35 billion.
These are all numbers which are held when you talk sustainability. Before we even talk inflation or what, we've been so much interested in the institutions and how they are a poison chalice to economic
So one is institutions.
Pardon?
So your point number one, strengthen institutions.
Then the legislature will look at it separately because its impact is quite toxic.
So it's part of institutions, but it's a
on a different direction to a certain extent. Then
So you're saying that parliamentarians need to be,
the oversight role is quite weak.
so what are you saying? They need to be educated, or are you saying the law needs to be strengthened?
Maybe laws have to look also at what it takes to be a parliamentary, possibly, because we're looking at sustainability of the nation going forward. But it is an issue which most Zimbabweans sleeping on their slumbers, they are not waking up to see we have a problem there.
Okay.
We
Number
have a
two.
weakness.
What's number three?
I think the third issue, which is a chorus already, if you look at our submissions, also is ZNCC, the matter to do with money supply growth. I think the corporate tombstones in this country, which arose as a result of money printing. That's why you heard me mentioning the time of Gono. If you followed our arguments, they are not personally related. In other words, even when Gono was at the home as a central bank governor, we never supported money printing as a way of either debunking or somehow mitigating against the impact of
Challenges.
sanctions. So money supply growth, you should know, as long as you are printing money, the result is quite very predictable, naturally. Where still when the economy is not expanding at that rate, the mentalist or the basic fisher model, without going further, I think you continue moving that M and the Q is down. You know what happens to the P, isn't it? It's basic as that. Seems like,
No, we don't. But Baran introduces you. But anyway, yeah.
Then I think another
The
issue,
M, the
which,
Q, the P.
I
like this guy.
well, but it was EP. Everyone, including those in political science, will learn about economic principles. So it's important for you
No,
to
it's not about Baran. No, but anyway, carry on.
Thank you. I think then you look at the productivity issue. It's a serious issue. We're still, when we're moving towards the African continental free trade area, the biggest fear, obviously, we ask on our readiness as a nation. After ratifying, of course, the debate is almost like putting the cart before the horse. We are already lost on it.
It's academic.
But let's find a way not to be a supermarket economy or a cash to economy to the world. Because the risk we run in the next Chamber of Commerce, as you see numbers in terms of capacity utilization. Sometimes it can look so handsome, but you're looking at capacity utilization maybe for only 18% of formal businesses in the country, when the whole economy is operating in the streets. So all statistics sometimes tend to then lose value when the economy continues somehow going underground. So production and productivity, and by nature an informal economy, it's
problematic.
It's short-termistic in nature. It doesn't even compensate innovation or skills.
You can't galvanize savings.
You see, you look at the savings ratio right now to GDP, negative. You look at consumption spending. Sometimes people debate, but consumption levels are quite very dwindling. They are low. There is poverty. So we want to see policies which promote production. The land issue itself, as Chamber of Commerce, we have a big membership in manufacturing, as we heard. But what's interesting about manufacturing in Zimbabwe, you see almost 70% of manufacturing is agro-processing. That's the structure of our manufacturing. Interestingly, maybe surprisingly to a certain extent. So the moment the value chain is weakened or the supply chain is weakened from the farmer itself, the language it is.
So we had an interesting conversation in our last episode about land tenure. Do you have an opinion?
Are you
as
opening a
ZNCC?
new rabbit hole?
No, well, possibly.
No, we're not opening a new rabbit hole.
No, you should.
But do you have an opinion? Maybe we can have another session for a hangover episode.
I think maybe a hangover episode, because I think
We still have something.
The last few points he's made
Sorry.
are very, very important.
Yeah.
3 key points.
No, actually 5.
No, but it's fine. Don't worry about the numbers.
Well, I trust Tinash's number more. He's sober.
There were 3 clear points.
Okay, what are the 3 points you take away?
The first one is institutions, which I think is a big one, that we need independence of our institutions. But then he then said parliamentarians, legislature, and I think that it's still
It's a sub-point.
It's a sub-point of institutions. Then the second one is on money supply growth.
Yeah.
That's a separate issue.
He's being polite. Printing.
Yeah. No, we just
Right. No more whiskey for you.
No, it's printing.
Maybe
Okay,
about
yeah.
3 for you.
Yeah.
that money supply.
You can't. Yeah, printing.
We
Whatever
shouldn't
you
print.
do, if you're printing, then the third is production. And then the production, he linked it to savings. And he says, well, if you're not producing, there's no productivity, then everything else just doesn't work. But for you to produce, there are certain things that you need, and I think
Savings is one of them.
Savings is the big one, because that's investments come
It's an engine,
from
especially when FDI is
savings. So minus the MQP,
Yeah.
I think that's the summary.
So you concede that my question was more interesting than yours.
Okay. Anyway, boys, this is a very good time to round it up. Yeah, I know you may have felt a little bit harangued, but thank you for coming by.
Pleasure,
Yes,
man.
it's
I pleasure.
I think I speak for Tweedledee and Tweedledum that it was a wonderful Friday evening. And I think you've triggered some thoughts in the minds of our viewers. And certainly, even as we go into the festive season, our viewers will be having some of these discussions with those near and dear to them. And as we always like to say, that's our main objective.
to get people thinking, to get people talking, and perhaps to record for posterity that our generation had ideas.
I think that's key.
Especially over
For
typical.
posterity, I think, what's going to happen is 3-4 generations later, there will come another generation that will think that they know it all, that they were some dum-dums, 4 generations before.
But also, I don't know, this is an interesting issue. It's controversial to a certain extent. But my core possibly for the nation, for Zimbabweans, I don't know to what extent can we tone down the political animal in us. If you see everything, it tend to become political. You
Maybe speak to the camera.
I know, but I hope the camera itself is recording this also. We want to see it. Politics is too strong in our institutions. You read a newspaper in this country, the leading headline is political. You see arguments, even academic arguments, they are neutralized by politics. So it's my fervent hope and belief that one day possibly we'll have a normal country where I think you follow even popular figures in the world. You know Wayne Rooney, isn't it?
I've heard about him.
Did you ever thought of it, whether he's from the Labour or the Conservative political party, which one does he support? Maybe you don't care, no one cares, even wherever. But in Zimbabwe, I think politics is so large in us to the extent that it's easy to define each other using such measure or an arbitrary tag, which is unfortunate. And I think it's also one issue we need to solve if we are to move forward. We are facing
How do we solve the
No. So anyway, I'm going to have the last word. I'm going to have the quote of the day. I'm going to have a quote.
Close the show.
I'm going to have a quote to corroborate his point, which is from the great Deng, who transformed China after he took over in 1976. And he made a fantastic point, which is that, to quote him, I don't care if the cat is black or white.
To paraphrase him.
Paraphrase him, okay.
didn't say that.
It's Chinese. I don't speak Mandarin. I don't care if the cat is black or white.
Yes.
If it catches mice, it's a good cat.
Perfect. It's a good cat.
And I think this is where we need to be as a country. We should just care whether we're making progress or not.
And maybe that's a good place for us to wind up. Does it matter whether the cat is black or white? If it catches mice, it's a good cat. COVID is real. Stay safe. If you can't be good at it.